What if I told you that one of the most brutal and calculated military ambushes of the 21st century was not only real, but inspired by a fictional massacre from Game of Thrones? On the morning of June 13, 2025, while Iran's top generals gathered in what they believed to be a secure, impenetrable underground bunker in Tehran, sipping coffee and discussing retaliation plans, they were already surrounded. Every word they spoke, every movement they made, was being tracked. What really happened that day goes far beyond a single strike. It marked the rise of a new kind of warfare, one that rewrites the rules of power in the Middle East. Within minutes, a wave of over 200 Israeli aircraft unleashed a coordinated storm of AI-guided bombs and missiles, turning that high-level meeting into a crater of silence. They weren't just attacks, they were messages, and their execution marked a bold shift in how modern wars are conceived and carried out. Not just from the skies, but from inside enemy borders, using infiltration, misdirection, and psychological warfare. Israel had executed a strike so precise, so lethal, and so meticulously orchestrated that military analysts across the globe were left stunned. 2 hidden drone bases and smuggled munitions lying dormant for months, waiting for the signal to strike. The operation had a name as symbolic as it was chilling. Operation Red Wedding, a reference to one of the most brutal betrayals in pop culture, now reimagined in real-life geopolitics. In less than 5 minutes, 30 of the most powerful military minds in Iran were gone. Not on a battlefield, not in combat, but inside their own fortress. It wasn't just about eliminating a room full of generals. It was the opening act of something much bigger, a comprehensive, multi-layered offensive known as Operation Rising Lion. Alongside it ran another parallel mission, shrouded in secrecy and fear, Operation Narnia. While Red Wedding struck military leadership, Narnia targeted the very minds behind Iran's nuclear ambitions. This wasn't a movie. There was no script. It was a real operation, executed with terrifying precision. And it had a name: Operation Red Wedding. But this was just one piece of a much larger game. A multi-dimensional war where lies, drones, and deception replaced tanks and declarations. On the morning of June 13th, the world awoke to news that felt like it came from the pages of a classified military thriller. But make no mistake, this was no isolated raid. Together, these missions formed a web of strategy and deception that blurred the lines between cyber warfare and kinetic military force. In this investigation, we'll break down exactly how these operations were engineered from within, from fake intelligence leaks and diplomatic theater. What was Israel really aiming to achieve? How did they outmaneuver one of the most secretive military networks in the world? And perhaps more importantly, what does this say about the future of warfare in a region already boiling with tension? Expect detailed maps, intercepted communications, advanced weapons analysis, and a geopolitical deep dive into one of the most daring covert missions in modern history. This isn't just a story about missiles and generals. It's about strategy, power, and the thin line between war and shadow war. Let's uncover what really call it Red Wedding. For anyone familiar with Game of Thrones, the name sends a chill down the spine. It is a direct reference to one of the most infamous scenes in modern television. A wedding celebration that turns into a cold-blooded massacre. A room filled with music, wine, and a false sense of safety suddenly becomes a trap. Allies become and the most powerful leaders of a noble house are slaughtered in minutes, without warning. That's not just a reference. Every word spoken in that bunker, every movement, had already been anticipated. The false sense of safety was the trap itself. It's a blueprint. In naming the Operation Red Wedding, Israel wasn't just labeling a military strike. It was sending a message, and missile commanders gathered for what was supposed to be a high-level strategy session. The atmosphere was calm. Discussions were underway. Security was tight. A swarm of Israeli aircraft crossed into Iranian airspace, launching AI-guided munitions with pinpoint accuracy. Within minutes, the bunker, and everyone inside it, had been reduced to silence. 30 of the most important military figures in the Iranian chain of command were gone. Told the world that this was not just about tactical advantage. It was psychological warfare at the highest level. The bunker was considered impenetrable, a symbol of safety and secrecy at the heart of Iran's military infrastructure, but delivered with deadly seriousness. This was a mission built on deception, precision, and psychological impact. Just like the fictional Red Wedding, the real-world version was designed to lull its targets into a false sense of security, only to execute a lethal ambush at the perfect moment. On the morning of June 13, 2025, In a heavily fortified underground bunker in Tehran, over 24 of Iran's top generals. But what no one in that room realized was that the entire meeting was a setup, a performance carefully orchestrated by Israeli intelligence. When the strike began, it was immediate and overwhelming. It was not just an assassination, it was a decapitation strike. And like the original Red Wedding, it was meant to shake the foundation of power. Not just with violence, but with shock. In warfare, names matter. They carry symbolism. They tell stories. An Operation Red Wedding, a message cloaked in pop culture. Before a single missile was launched, before the drones took flight, or the satellites locked on their targets, this operation began in silence. With forged identities, quiet conversations in local dialects, and deep cover agents embedded where no one expected them. For years, operatives from the Israeli Mossad, widely regarded as one of the most skilled and elusive intelligence agencies in the world, slowly infiltrated the heart of Iranian society. They didn't wear uniforms. They didn't carry flags. They became teachers, mechanics, merchants. Some posed as sympathizers, others as locals returning from abroad. Through cyber attacks and social engineering, they penetrated secure military servers, tapped into encrypted transmissions, and quietly observed how decisions were made at the highest levels of the Iranian military. Every identity was crafted with meticulous precision, every backstory every move calculated. The Mossad exploited existing fears, rivalries, and ambitions within the Iranian command structure. To reinforce the illusion, Israel staged diplomatic theater on the world stage. They appeared distracted. Their forces stood down. Even public tensions with the United States were exaggerated to create a sense of calm. Missile and drone commanders, including high-ranking generals with decades of experience, gathered to coordinate upcoming retaliatory operations. It was, by all appearances, a lull in hostilities. Internal messages were forged. Imaginary threats were invented. Communications were subtly altered. Every breadcrumb was placed with a single purpose: to guide Iran's top generals toward a trap, without them ever suspecting it. Their goal: information and influence. Inside Iran, they built networks of informants and double agents, infiltrated municipal systems, and accessed restricted communication channels. But they weren't just gathering intelligence. They were planting it too. In a campaign of strategic misinformation, false data was carefully introduced into the decision-making loops of the IRGC, Iran's powerful Revolutionary Guard Corps. The climax of this years-long deception came when Israeli intelligence fed just enough inside information to suggest that a certain underground bunker in Tehran, long considered invulnerable, was the safest possible location for a high-level strategy meeting. Iran took the bait. Believing that the region was momentarily stable, the leadership scheduled a critical meeting in the fortified bunker. They had no idea they were walking into a death trap, one that had been years in the making. This wasn't just military deception. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare and narrative control, where the battlefield was not just physical space, but the minds of decision-makers themselves. The bunker may have been made of concrete and steel, but its security had already been compromised, not by force, but by fiction. Every great deception needs a stage, and in this case, the stage was the world itself. To make the trap believable, Israel didn't just manipulate intelligence behind closed doors. It took the performance to the highest levels of international diplomacy. This wasn't only a military operation, it was a geopolitical illusion, carefully choreographed for an audience of generals, politicians, and intelligence officers across the Middle East. The key to the ruse: appear weak, appear distracted, appear divided. Surveillance drones flew less frequently. Military exercises near Iranian airspace were postponed. Troop movements slowed. The typical noise of Israeli readiness was deliberately quieted. In the weeks leading up to the attack, Israel subtly dialed down its aerial operations in the region. At the same time, a new narrative was allowed to take shape, one of tension between Israel and its closest ally, the United States. Leaks to the press hinted at disagreements over strategy in the Middle East. Public statements from Israeli officials suggested hesitation. American diplomats appeared to distance themselves from recent Israeli actions. Satellite surveillance remained active. Electronic warfare units were in place. Pilots were on standby. But from the outside, it looked like nothing was happening. All of it fed into a single perception: that Israel had lost momentum, or lost focus. Like Israel had stepped back. Because in modern warfare, the perception of strength or weakness is itself a weapon. And when your enemy believes you're not watching, that's when they let their guard down. The world stage had become a battlefield, and diplomacy, in this case, was just another front in a war of deception. Perhaps now was the time to plan the next move in a moment of quiet. It was the opening they had been waiting for. On the surface, it looked like the alliance was under strain. For Iran, this was a signal. If Israel was hesitating, if it was isolated diplomatically, then perhaps now was the time to regroup. And that's exactly what Israel wanted them to believe. Behind the scenes, the Mossad and the IDF had already set the wheels in motion. Even subtle diplomatic gestures were weaponized. A cancelled meeting here, a delayed statement there, an ambiguous remark at the UN. But the truth was exactly the opposite. This diplomatic theater wasn't a distraction from the operation. It was an essential part of it. Iran did just that. Convinced that the skies were clear and the political climate was shifting in their favor, the IRGC's top commanders gathered, unaware that the entire performance had been written for them. In an era where alliances are signals and silence is strategy, Israel turned global perception into a tool of warfare, showing that sometimes the most dangerous lies are the ones told in full view of the world. Before the first aircraft took off, before the first missile was armed, the strike had already begun. With silence, for months, Israel had been watching, not through open skies or loud surveillance flights, but through a seamless web of spy drones, orbital satellites, and advanced digital evaluation. Mossad operatives on the ground relayed local movements. Drones disguised as civilian objects flew over restricted zones, and high-resolution satellites captured footage from far above Tehran, following patterns of military traffic that seemed routine, but weren't. Every signal, every convoy, every whispered command behind closed doors, all of it was being monitored in real time, and when necessary, decoys were introduced to steer Iranian responses in a direction that suited the Israeli timeline. At the heart of this operation was a fusion of human intelligence and signals intelligence. Who spoke to whom, when convoys left specific bases, how commanders reacted to different types of information. From this data, they could predict not just actions, but intention. What made this surveillance so effective wasn't just the hardware, it was the software, and the psychological warfare running quietly beneath the surface. Their arrival at the underground bunker was confirmed by layered intel, thermal imagery from satellite, signals from compromised security feeds, and physical confirmation from assets embedded nearby. But in this operation, surveillance was the weapon, a tool not just of observation, but of orchestration. The moment the last general walked through the blast doors and sat down, the digital timer began to tick. Using advanced AI algorithms, Israel mapped behavioral patterns within the IRGC. Then came the electronic warfare layer, subtle but surgical. Communication signals were intercepted and manipulated. Military radios were compromised. GPS data was jammed or spoofed. This wasn't about overwhelming firepower. It was about manipulating perception. By controlling what Iran could see, hear, and believe, Israel began shaping reality inside the Iranian command structure, crafting the illusion of safety, of timing, of tactical opportunity. In other words, they controlled the clock. Every movement by the Iranian generals was tracked and logged. From that point forward, the operation wasn't a question of if, only when. In traditional warfare, intelligence gathering is a support mechanism. By the time the first missile was launched, the outcome had already been sealed. The generals were not only surrounded, they had been psychologically disarmed. They believed they were safe, that they had time. But Israel had been watching, and their time had already run out. At the precise moment, the skies above Tehran erupted into a coordinated symphony of power and precision. More than 200 Israeli aircraft ranging from F-15s and F-16s to the most advanced F-35 stealth fighters sliced through the air with deadly intent. This was not a chaotic barrage. It was a carefully choreographed strike, executed with clockwork accuracy. Each aircraft was armed with an array of AI-guided munitions, including JDM bombs capable of pinpoint targeting, Popeye cruise missiles designed to penetrate hardened bunkers, and Sparrow missiles optimized for rapid search. The missiles were not merely dropped. They were guided in real time by sophisticated targeting pods, tracking the smallest heat signatures and structural weaknesses to ensure maximum impact with minimal collateral damage. Yet the aerial assault was only one facet of a much larger, layered attack. Months before the strike, Israeli operatives had covertly smuggled kamikaze, explosive-laden, unmanned, aerial vehicles into Iranian territory. The element of surprise was total. Iranian forces found themselves caught in a meticulously planned chokehold, unable to react, unable to call for reinforcements. hidden in plain sight, and assembled piece by piece, in clandestine locations. These drones waited silently for their signal. Once activated from their secret bases within Iran, they sprang into action. It was not simply a military strike. It was a statement, a demonstration of how the future of conflict is being reached. Drones and surgical strikes that leave no room for error or escape. These drones functioned as the operation's first line of offense. Their mission: to neutralize Iran's air defenses before they could mount any response. Swift and relentless, the drones homed in on surface-to-air missile sites, including advanced S-300 battery installations, disabling radar arrays and missile launchers with explosive precision. By blinding the Iranian air defense grid from within, these drone strikes paved the way for the incoming waves of Israeli jets to penetrate Iranian airspace with reduced risk. Within minutes, the underground bunker once thought to be impenetrable was pulverized. The strike was devastating. The leadership was eliminated, and the message was unmistakable. This was modern warfare at its most ruthless and precise. A blend of cutting-edge technology, human intelligence, and daring stealth. While the dramatic explosions of Operation Red Wedding dominated headlines in the skies over Tehran, a quieter, more insidious campaign was unfolding simultaneously in the shadows. This was Operation Narnia, a covert series of assassinations targeting Iran's top nuclear scientists, carried out not on battlefields, but in the sanctity of their own homes. Rather than hitting nuclear facilities directly, Israel chose to dismantle the human capital behind the program, the scientists whose expertise made Iran's atomic ambitions possible. The goal was clear and chillingly strategic: to cripple Iran's nuclear program without sparking a full-scale war. Each target was selected not just for their role, but for the difficulty Iran would face in replacing them. These missiles were likely launched from drones or concealed ground units, deployed months in advance near the target's residences. They were experts in nuclear engineering, reactor physics, and chemical processing, the silent architects of a program that threatened regional stability. The strikes were surgical, designed to kill the targets without causing widespread destruction or civilian casualties. There were no dramatic explosions, no massive air raids. Instead, a whisper of death passed through Tehran's neighborhoods, silencing key minds overnight. For years, Israeli intelligence had tracked these scientists meticulously. It sent a powerful message that the war against Iran's nuclear ambitions was being fought on multiple fronts, not just with bombs and missiles, but with stealth, precision, and psychological pressure. The method of elimination was as precise as it was deadly, using specialized variants of spike missiles, modified for discrete, high-precision strikes. Israel executed near-simultaneous attacks on 9 scientists. Timing was critical. Each missile struck within moments of the others, leaving no time for alarm or defense. This invisible blow was intended to paralyze Iran's nuclear progress, buying Israel time and disrupting any retaliation plans. Operation Narnia demonstrated a chilling evolution in covert warfare, where killing the brain behind the machine could be more effective than destroying the machine itself. What if the greatest threat to a country's defenses didn't come from the skies above, but from within its own borders? Israel's strategy went beyond traditional aerial bombardments. Months before the explosive strikes unfolded, Israeli intelligence had quietly established a secret drone base deep inside Iran. This wasn't a single installation, but a network of hidden facilities, assembled piece by piece, component by component, in absolute secrecy. The process was painstaking. Small drone parts were smuggled across borders, disguised as civilian goods. Technicians operated under cover of night, assembling fast and deadly machines in concealed locations, close enough to Tehran to strike with speed and precision. The quadcopters followed, delivering precise explosive payloads to finish the job, disabling the defenses that would otherwise have threatened the Israeli strike force. This covert base became the nerve center for a new kind of warfare, one fought with stealth and technology, and smoke. These drone waves operated silently, like ghosts inside the enemy's own backyard, and battles were won by those who controlled the skies and cyberspace simultaneously. Iranian forces were left scrambling, blindsided by attacks that seemed to come from nowhere. From this hidden stronghold, Israel launched waves of FPV drones and explosive The FPV drones, maneuverable and small, darted aggressively toward key Iranian air defense positions, including some of the region's most sophisticated systems, notably the feared S-300 surface-to-air missile batteries. These drones weren't just distractions. They were weapons in their own right. programmed for kamikaze-style suicide attacks that obliterated radar arrays and missile launchers. What made this approach revolutionary was its invisibility. Unlike conventional strikes that announce themselves with thunder, this was warfare redefined. A battle fought not only across borders but within them. It blurred the lines between offensive and defensive, between home and battlefield. In essence, Israel created a secret battlefield beneath the surface of Iran's own territory, where machines flew unseen. This multi-layered assault was more than just an attack. It was a demonstration of how future conflicts will be fought, quietly, precisely, and invisibly. Iran's nuclear program is not just a collection of buildings and machines. It is a fortress, a complex network of underground facilities designed to withstand the most powerful conventional attacks. Buried deep beneath layers of reinforced concrete, hardened steel, and natural geological formations. These sites are engineered to resist bombardments. They are shielded by dozens of meters of earth and specially designed barriers that absorb shockwaves and deflect conventional explosives. Each strike may cause damage, but it often falls short of the deep core where uranium centrifuges spin relentlessly. Without this crucial tool, Israeli forces have had to adapt. Even Israel's most advanced bunker-busting bombs, weapons designed to penetrate fortifications, barely manage to scratch the surface, compounding the challenge. Israel lacks full access to some of the world's most powerful bunker-busting technology. Specifically, the American-made GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator, a bomb capable of piercing layers of reinforced concrete over 60 feet thick. Their solution, a strategy of erosion, targeting the same underground facilities multiple times over months and even years, rather than attempting a single decisive strike that risks failure or catastrophic escalation. Israel has adopted a relentless campaign of repeated precision strikes. Each attack chips away at the protective layers, disrupting power supplies, damaging support infrastructure, and forcing Iran to constantly repair and reinforce. And the question remains, how long can Iran withstand the pressure before the fortress finally cracks? Repeated strikes increase the chances of escalation, retaliation, or unintended consequences. But for Israel, the stakes are clear. Like a sculptor painstakingly carving stone, Israel is peeling back the layers of protection, slowly, methodically, and with surgical precision. This approach also serves a dual purpose. It keeps Iranian defenses constantly on edge, forcing them to divert resources to repair and protect their most critical assets. It buys time for the international community and sends a clear message that Iran's nuclear ambitions will not proceed unchecked. Yet the strategy carries risks. In this war of attrition, the battlefield lies deep, underground, invisible, fortified, and perilous. At first glance, Operation Red Wedding might appear as a singular, dramatic military strike, a swift act of retaliation in an ongoing conflict. But look closer, and you'll see it was far more than that. This was not just a raid. It was the culmination of a complex, multi-front chess game that had been unfolding for years. Every move was calculated, every piece carefully positioned. Israel didn't just wait for its adversaries to make mistakes. It engineered the circumstances to force them into a trap. These strikes were not mere explosions. They were carefully choreographed moves on the battlefield, designed to neutralize specific targets while minimizing broader fallout. At its heart was an intricate web of disinformation and deception, a psychological battlefield, where false intelligence was fed to the enemy to manipulate their actions and perceptions. The silent guardians of this operation were drones, satellites, and cyber agents, all seamlessly woven into the fabric of the strike. But with information warfare, psychological manipulation, and cutting-edge technology that blurs the lines between peace and war, surveillance played a critical role, extending far beyond simple reconnaissance. It involved a relentless, 24/7 digital watch over Iranian military communications, movements, and even thought processes. And then came the surgical strikes. Precision attacks delivered with overwhelming force but minimal collateral damage. Operation Red Wedding was not just about retaliation. It was a blueprint for a new kind of warfare, one defined by intelligence, invisibility, and precision. It demonstrated how modern conflict is no longer solely fought with tanks and bombs. This strategy signals a shift in how power is exercised in the 21st century, where the most decisive victories happen not through brute force, but through mastery of information, stealth, and surgical execution. In essence, Israel showed the world that the future of warfare is silent, invisible, and unavoidable, a realm where intelligence agencies become armies, And the battlefield exists as much in the mind as it does on the ground. We are no longer witnessing warfare as it was known in previous centuries. This is a new era, one where the deadliest battles don't roar to life with the clashing of tanks or the thunder of artillery. Instead, they begin in the shadows with manipulated data, psychological operations, and silent swarms of drones. Israel's Operation Red Wedding proved a chilling truth. It is possible to decapitate an enemy's entire command structure without ever declaring war. Each move in this shadow game raises the stakes higher. It forces nations to rethink security, sovereignty, and the meaning of conflict in the 21st century. Through deception, precision strikes, and invisible operations, they eliminated the core of Iran's military leadership in a matter of minutes. But such a profound escalation does not come without consequences. How will Iran respond? Will this trigger a wider conflict? Or will it push the world toward new forms of diplomacy and deterrence? The real question is no longer if these tactics will be used again, but what the next move will be. And beyond politics and military strategy, there is a deeper, more unsettling question. When the curtains finally fall on this silent war, how many truths will we still be willing to face? How much of what we see, what we hear, and what we believe is carefully constructed? In this new age, where information is a weapon and silence a battlefield, the line between reality and illusion grows thinner every day. As observers, as global citizens, we must ask ourselves, are we ready to confront these shadows? Because in this new war, ignorance is not just bliss, it's dangerous. If you found this deep dive into Operation Red Wedding and the complex web of modern warfare insightful, there's much more where that came from. On this channel, we bring you cinematic storytelling paired with sharp geopolitical analysis and exclusive revelations, stories that rarely make it to mainstream news. So, if you want to stay ahead of the curve and truly understand the forces shaping our world, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Don't forget to like this video if it made you think, and share it with friends who are curious about the hidden dynamics of global conflicts. Most importantly, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us, do you see Israel's Operation Red Wedding as a brilliant strategic triumph, or as a dangerous signal of the volatile path the world is heading down? Your thoughts and debates keep this conversation alive and deepen our understanding of these critical moments in history. Join the community, and let's explore the hidden stories shaping our future together.